Hi, this is Wendy and Laura, and this is our new podcast. We're called Mama Bears on Purpose. We're doing a new show, a brand new show, about teaching you how to have godly values right now in your life, in your home, in your marriages, with your children, in your relationships. We are Mama Bears who care, who have hearts for our own homes, and we want to teach you how to have that same heart. We're also homeschool moms, so that will come up at times, but we just love to teach others how to live on purpose, so that is our heart with doing this show. We pray that you would tune in, we pray that you would be encouraged, and we pray that you would have hope during these times.
Hi, and Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
2024. We hope that you guys had just blessed holidays, spending time with your loved ones, that you were able to grow not only in your walk with God, but just as a person. And as we come into a new year, I love this time. Yesterday, Matt was like, did you text anyone and say Happy New Year? And he was like, what? I don't know. Some people are so different. I had people text me. I said Happy New Year. Yeah. But I don't know if it's in the Bible to say Happy New Year. But you do come into a new year, I would think, with a new mindset. That's how I think. Yeah. I think, okay, it's a new year. So what can you do differently this year that maybe you didn't do last year? Mm-hmm. So I was just telling Wendy, I do really want to learn how to sew. I've said that for the last couple of years, but I think I just need to commit. Where my daughter had her best friend yesterday, we went ice skating, and she has a new stepmom that the stepmom's mother only speaks Spanish. So she's put the app Duolingo on her phone to like commit to learning Spanish. So those are the type of things, like what could you do this year? How could you grow? And we've always asked the kids, how could you grow physically? Like, you know, whether it's your workout routine or eating better, things like that, spiritually, and then just as like a person, what could you do in the community? Something else at church, things like that.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I always get planning pages and printables from Big Life Journal. Okay. And they always send really cool things for the kids, so I just printed their little placemat, kind of overview of 2023. What was your,
I like that.
What was your word for that year, and then what's your word going to be for this year, and what do you want to, something new you want to learn, something that you want to do, and then how do you want to end this new year? So I like that they help the kids get a mindset for the year. It's going to be good. We're going to make it good. Yes. And it's going to be something special.
Right. Which we know, Wendy and I are informed about things going on that so many people are like, we are living in crazy times. And I'll say that just like the next person. However, we are alive during this time. Yeah. When we wake up and we have breath in our lungs for another day, how are we teaching our kids to live? So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how to add joy. How can you add joy in 2024? Instead of it being that you are living in fear, that you are living in anxiety, that you are living in like, what's going to happen? Doomsday. I love even just what Wendy just said. And so one thing about adding joy is, who do you surround yourself with? Here we are doing this for 3 minutes, and I'm like, I'm going to print that when we get home. I've always used like a spiral notebook or like a cute journal, like about writing down the things that the kids have said. Oh, also, just a family friend of ours, she has, for the last 5 years, has written down what everybody's word for the year is. Oh, boy. But it's in her phone or like in a journal. And so it's cute because she asked us for the last 2 years when they've been together, and then just asked me the other day, and I couldn't narrow it down. So I'm going to have to text it to her. But it's really neat because even to have someone else be thinking of like, okay, what is your word like for you? I thought that was neat too. Mm-hmm. But something about joy, I think of smiles, laughter, lightheartedness, joking, being spontaneous, not so serious, complimenting other people, being kind. However, I do ask you, what happened to all of this? That is a serious question that I ask you, I'm asking us. Like, a lot of those things are missing from people personally in their lives, missing from society, missing from families, missing from workplaces. There's a lot of, even the word that it's a normal thing, like a disgruntled employee. why is the employee disgruntled? Do we see happy families? Do we see, sometimes I've seen that people have looked at pictures of families back then and said like, oh, it must have been better then. I don't know about that, because there was racism years ago. There was hard times. People lived through the Depression. People lived through times of things that this generation really couldn't have imagined, of not having electricity, not having the same type of running water or sewage, or what the modern conveniences that we should smile about.
Right.
Really, being able to go to the fridge, being able, after, I'm here for a little bit for our shows, I need to run to the store. I make a lot of things from scratch, but I still depend on, I'm gonna get some hamburger buns. Things like that. Like, that wasn't an option, 200, 300, 1,000 years ago. It just wasn't.
Right.
But when I look at one of my favorite passages by Paul in the book of Philippians, one of the things he starts out in Philippians 4 is he says, rejoice always. I'm going to read all of it, but that's one thing that we are going to challenge you, and hopefully by the end of this show, it could be something that you would grasp, and not only grasp, but hold on to, put in your heart, work on every single day, is how to add joy in each and every circumstance in your life. Add joy to your marriage, add joy to your life, add joy to your parenting, add joy to whatever workplace you're in. Could you be someone that when people know you as a neighbor, they think that you are joyful, they think that you have a smile on your face? In your family. There was something recently that I read, it was another verse in Philippians, but I really just loved it. But he was talking about, are you someone that when people leave, that they know Christ? And I just think, well, what is that? Like, what do people look at when you leave a certain place?
Yeah.
What do you think of when you think of that?
Yeah, I think about, usually about my mom. And kind of the family that she grew up in, because my grandpa was a jokester, like from way back, and he was the baby of the family, so it makes sense that he was the jokester, that he would always, do something to make everybody laugh.
That's how Silas is.
Even, I had him for, let's see, how old was I? 35-ish when he passed away, so I had him for a good long time. But yeah, my mom and her siblings learned how to just find a joke. Just
all the time.
Out of nowhere,
Yeah.
my mom will find a joke in the grocery line. And like, I look at her, like her brain's not right, but it is right. Like, she just has the mindset to always find something to not make fun of in a bad way, but just to be, like, she finds a piece of fruit in the grocery store, and she has to buy it because it looks goofy. That's just
looking for it.
Yeah, and she's looking for it, and then she takes it home. She takes pictures of it in weird situations, and she sends it to my kids. Like, who does this? Like, who does this? But my mom has a mindset of just always finding something goofy around her and bringing it out.
Yes,
making you notice it, and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
I love that. We put on, it was the 700 Club, but just like the Christian news that we watch. But there was a guy that was going around of different places in Israel and saying that there was Bible prophecy that's being fulfilled in these different places. Like in the book of, I want to say Hosea, he was talking about that vineyards would grow. And it was in this area specifically that he was talking about near Judea. But what he said was neat about that area was that's where before it was very fruitful and things grew, but for thousands of years things didn't, and hundreds of years. But that's where David wrote many of the Psalms. So it was pointing to a valley where David wrote the Psalms. And I think of even David's life and how people, even if they don't read the Bible or they wouldn't call themselves like walking Christians, people know what the Psalms are. And so when you think of the writer of that, like, I always like to know who the author is of different books or stories, or like what is their life or why did they write that. But when you think of David, he didn't not only have the easiest life, he was a shepherd. That was a hard job. So when you think of the word mundane, yes, it was mundane. And honestly, we don't know that type of work, many of us, that he had to fend off wild animals in order to protect the sheep. Right. But he was the youngest in his family, so he was probably looked down upon as like, oh gosh, there's David over there. Then you hear these very famous stories about him defeating Goliath, crazy and that he was supposed to be king. So here is someone that wrote many of the Psalms, not only when he was probably doing what he was doing, just a regular guy being a shepherd, but then he ended up being the king. But as the king, he made so many mistakes. So some of his Psalms were written during, he had a guy killed and ended up taking his wife. She got pregnant, the baby died. Some of the Psalms were written during that time. And so I think for us, we just think of joy and laughter and jokes and smiling of possibly when things are good. And that's not how God sees it, because God is the author of life, but of the good and the bad. And so there's going to be things that will happen in our lives and struggles that will even happen. And what are we going to do with that? Mm-hmm. And so in the midst of that, are we going to be laughing our heads off during a death? No, because there is a time for mourning and a time for joy. However, how are we responding to the things that are going to happen? And can we still have that joy that Jesus offers in the midst of things that we're going through? Mm-hmm. Joy is found 167 times in the Bible. That's what I found anyway. Maybe it's more. And maybe there's different areas where it's like there's a praise, the word praise, because I do think of joy. Mm-hmm. But that actual word is found 167 times. So in the day-to-day, in the errands, the deadlines, the commitments, the kids, the housework, schoolwork, relationships, the ups and downs of all that, I think most of us have lost our joy. So one thing that we want to teach you today, well, not one, a couple of things, is how to get that back and what that would look like in your life in 2024. I like to look at other people, like how Wendy looked at her mom, and a couple of books I want to point out, or just famous people, there's a book called Hearts of Fire. Every one of those stories, it's about 8 women that are persecuted for their faith, but you could see the joy for Jesus in their life and in the things that they've gone through. And I just love that, because you're not reading these stories of heartache and nuttiness and of them running for their lives or being thrown in prison or separated from their family, and they're just like on the ground in a fetal position. Right. You don't see that. They have a joy for telling other people about Jesus and how he can heal them and change their life. Corrie ten Boom is another one. If you haven't read the book The Hiding Place, and there's a movie, and she just has an amazing testament of still having the joy that Jesus offers despite circumstances that make no sense. Right. Because their family was trying to protect Jews. They were a Christian family, and they all got thrown in a concentration camp. Just an amazing story. And then there's a book called Jesus Freaks, where it talks about different people, almost more modern day, that are persecuted for their faith. Mm-hmm. And just a neat website too. But I'm going to read Philippians 4:4-8, and that's pretty much everything that I want to talk about in that. Mm-hmm. I would memorize that as a family, as a person, where it will speak to your heart in any and all circumstances that you're going through. But Philippians 4 says, "Rejoice in the Lord always." Will say it again. Rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. I love that chapter, and I love that. So before we go on to our next segment, is there anything else you want to say?
Just as far as books are concerned, I thought of 1,000 Gifts by Ann Voskamp, who she goes through that book helping you see the little gifts that God gives you every day, and to make a list. Find 3 of them each day, and at the end of the year, you'll have over 1,000 in your journal that you have seen. And I started seeing like the craziest things. Like I would just be thankful to have a sleeping baby in my lap.
Yeah.
Just that was God's gift to me in that moment for that time. I just have this sleeping baby in my arm. I mean, who doesn't want a sleeping baby in their arms? I'm sorry. That's just like the most relaxing time ever, just to sit there and be consumed with this little bundle that's so relaxed. But just to be able to thank God for my coffee in the morning, to thank him just to sit there and have that time. that the kids weren't up yet. There's just
Yeah.
little things that I wanted to grab and hang on to and be grateful for.
Yes.
Because I might not have this tomorrow or next week or whatever. So that book was really instrumental to be grateful. Be grateful, because an ungrateful heart is a joyless heart.
Yes. Oh, it's so true. When I read that book, I started my list, and it's at 9,000 now.
Oh, wow.
I know, it's pretty neat, because it is some of those things that Wendy says, and once you train, that's one of the next things we're going to be talking about, is how do we get the joy that's lost back? And part of that is retraining our brain. Mm-hmm. And so once you train your brain to look for those things to be thankful for, it'll be, okay, there's someone that I may have lost, whether it's a death or a relationship, but has God restored one?
Right.
And things that you can do, like that you can go on a hike or go on a walk, where it might be that there's other people not able to do those things. Their health isn't as good, or things like that. Or say that your health isn't good, but there's people that you are surrounded by that love you. Those are the type of things. And those, what I named off, are big things. But how do you train your brain in things like you have a pillow, you have a blanket? Mine was written down literally everything. Like, we had wood for a fire, mm-hmm. and then we had a fire. Mm-hmm. And I would try to have it on my kids' hearts, where, like, we've talked about this before, but it's a normal thing. But if we would make blessing bags and feed the homeless, or go down to like the homeless shelter and donate a couple of times, or there's a place up here called High Desert Second Chance, where you can make boxes like for the needy, or on Saturdays people can drive by that need food. Mm-hmm. I will have my kids look and see, like, what do we have here that you take for granted? And so those type of things too, like, we have breakfast, we have food in our pantry. Those are the type of things. And a way and a verse to keep at the forefront of your mind about how to retrain our brain is Romans 12:2. It says, do not conform to this world, but instead transform your mind. So transform your thinking on the good and perfect will of God, that you are not conformed to this world. And that's all Romans 12:2 is about, is the mindset of this world is worldly. Mm-hmm. The mindset of God is godly, of the things of God. That doesn't mean you can never have money. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy things of this world. It means retrain your brain to be content.
Yep.
Retrain your brain that you don't need to be doing what this world is doing all the time, but are you serving? Are you a selfless person that is good about putting others above yourself? And so if that is you are someone that is already knowing how to retrain your brain. But if not, then you have to make that habitual. Mm-hmm. You have to make it habitual that you are not a complainer. Mm-hmm. You have to make that habitual that you are a complimenter. A little more habitual that you smile all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's what it means. Retraining your brain, it doesn't just happen and then it's done. It's an everyday thing that you are doing that. You're focusing not on the negative, not on the destructive things. That will not refresh you. But you do the opposite. And then you will not have that stress and anxiety that so many people these days are just living with and thinking that's normal every single day.
Right. Ecclesiastes 2:26 says, to the man who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering up and storing wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. I don't want to be that other guy that has to push everything over to someone else. Like, right. I want God to bless my family. I want him to bless what we're doing, and to just smile when he looks at my family, when he looks at me. So, and Ecclesiastes is all about being content, don't find yourself in all these worthless things.
Yes.
Find yourself in God alone.
I love that. All right, well, how do we keep it? If we are talking about how to have joy when it counts, how to have joy all the time, but how do we keep it? Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that you constantly check the state of your heart, like constantly. There's going to be times that we go through things, and I've actually been there for a couple of people lately that have gone through terrible, terrible heartaches. And you take one step at a time towards not only allowing Jesus to heal you, but check the state of your heart. Is there places in your heart that you could allow God that possibly you were kind of trying to keep for yourself? Because it's a little easier and to you a little more comfortable to stay in that state of not only frustration, but just grief. But when you are constantly checking the state of your heart, you are allowing God to heal you, and then you are taking those steps of getting your joy back. John 14:6 says, I, Jesus, am the way, the truth, and the life. So are we focusing our hearts on the truth? Are we focusing it on the way to a joyful way of living? And are we cleaning it out? That the way to living for Jesus is to have a clean heart. Our hearts lie to us. So our hearts want sometimes for us just to stay the way they are. But Jesus wants us to have a clean heart. I think of it as just, we had some weather where it was raining and I live on 2 acres of dirt. And I will mop, but then if there's weather like this, I have to mop again. I can't just leave it like that, although I'm a little irritated because I just had mopped a couple of days before. But that's just part of it. And some days it'll stay cleaner because there's not weather where the dogs or kids will track it in. But that might be how it is for us too. You might have to constantly clean your heart out and constantly be thinking of things that you're focusing on instead of focusing on the Word of God or the things that you know are true about God, true about what His Word says, true about different relationships in your life. So that's where when we constantly have a heart check like that, our hearts will reflect more joy, even through things that we're going through.
Yeah. James 1 verse 2 says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Our joy is from an internal knowing the Lord, knowing that all of this, every moment, everything we're going through, everything that we enjoy has meaning and purpose ultimately. It's not just for the purpose of giving you joy in that moment, which, that's nice, but it is for the purpose of God's glory. In all of eternity. So we are looking at that, and that's where in Hebrews 12:2 we fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. So he knew what was coming on the other side of it, and he went through it anyway. For us, none of it benefited him in any fashion. He did it for us. So pouring ourselves out on a daily basis is where we'll find that joy.
So our pastor wore a shirt. I have a shirt like that too, but I think I just love it. But it was a sweatshirt actually to church last Sunday that said Hope Dealer. And I have a t-shirt that says Hope Dealer. Well, I like to think now, even in what we're talking about, is joy spreader. How could you be a joy spreader?
Yes.
So if we have been talking about how to have joy, how to keep it, how could you be a joy spreader? And it's crazy because sometimes we don't have so many verses, which there's so many that go with this. I think it's amazing. But how joyful are those that fear the Lord? All those that follow his ways with you will enjoy the fruit of your labor. So God tells you these things. He said that you will enjoy the fruit of your labor. How joyful and prosperous you will be. Amazing. Really amazing. Your wife will be like a fruitful grapevine flourishing within your home. And that's Psalm 128. So every day we have an opportunity. Every day we have an opportunity to spread joy. This verse in Psalm 128 talked about you will flourish. What if you flourished in such a way that possibly, you did have an actual garden and you gave your neighbors the fruit of that garden? What if you were someone in your neighborhood that had a smile, that dropped off bread in your own home? Your spouse, your joy was contagious. They were like, geez, she wakes up with a smile. He wakes up with a smile. Even as I came here, I had told Wendy I was a little bit late because I was making breakfast for Matt because he was off. It's a little bit of a different schedule. But I could have totally been different. We're talking about being mama bears on purpose. So part of my purpose is to be a good wife to Matt and have that flow out of a smile on my face about it and not complaining and having my kids see that oh, dad's off work, so mom's making a bigger breakfast instead of oh, here's some yogurt with granola. But what does that look like for you to be a joy spreader? There was this thing I saw years ago, and we replicated a little bit some years ago in doing it stockings, but it was called Joy Jars. And this lady had started it and had kids in her neighborhood make jars where you would drop off for kids in hospitals. Well, near us, we have Chalk Children's Hospital and Loma Linda. What an easy thing that you could do, but that could be anywhere. What would it look like if we had joy jars? Really, like I think you can give those to clerks at grocery stores. I don't know, the lady that's working at Panera. And I just think of cute little mason jars that might have like a verse in it, some chapstick, like mittens, candy. I don't know. Anything that would just be like, and then we just write joy on the front of it. We really should do it. Sometimes I have these ideas and I have to contain them. So when I tell someone else, it's like, let's do those joy jars. But do we know anyone sick right now? Yeah. Do we know anyone that's suffering? Are you a joy spreader where it doesn't mean you're just like, let's laugh it up over, some frozen yogurt? No, you could be a joy spreader by checking on them, dropping off a package, or soup if someone's sick, sending them a verse, sending them a song, putting on praise and worship in your home, even when maybe in your home you guys might be going through something. Yeah. But how are you a joy spreader? I think if we really focus and think of that, you really will live 2024 different.
Yes. And pray.
Yes.
Pray for joy. Because especially in those hard seasons, it's gonna be tough to you can't muster this up.
No.
From yourself. It comes from a supernatural place. Yeah. So you have to pray for joy in the tough seasons, maybe even in the good seasons where it's happy but it feels a little empty. Yeah. We need to pray for joy. We need to pray in any situation.
Yeah, it's true.
Because like I said, it's not going to come from inside you somewhere. You're not going to just pull this out of nowhere, unless you're my mom, and you do. But yeah, find ways to spread joy. Somebody comes and gets your mail or drops off mail every day. You could bless that person.
Yes.
That mail carrier drives around, who knows what kind of crap they get from wherever. And you could just bless them once in a while with a loaf of banana bread, or just we stick a soda out there once in a while, just because one thing, I don't want it in the house to drink it, so he could enjoy it, right, while he's on his route. But yeah, stick a dollar bill behind something at the dollar store, so that somebody else could enjoy it.
I think that is so true. And within your own home, how could you pray to be more creative, to be more fun, to not be like some type of robot that's like, everyone help fold the clothes, now we got to get the dishes done? Do you stop to enjoy the house that you're living in, the people that you're living with? We just talked before this about how I got invited to my friend neighbor's house that lives right by me for a game night last week, and it was cute. It was just a couple hours notice and right near me, so me and my youngest Silas went, and those type of things are even just being a joy spreader. Doesn't take much money, but do you do that in your own home? Plan a hike. I've been having it on my mind, and so I'm like, I just need to plan it. But just going to a hike with a waterfall, enjoying God's nature with your family. A thing like that doesn't cost a lot of money either. Right. Well, how do we live full of joy no matter what? We've kind of talked about that, so we're just going to end with this. But what I would want to say about that is keep fearing the Lord, keep honoring him, his word, and seek his ways. That's really the gist of it. It seems so simple, but it's so true. And so that is how you live with joy no matter what. That is how you don't lose it no matter your circumstances. That is how it will be that you will have the joy that Jesus offers, the peace he will offer living with him, even if it makes just no sense to be living like that in that day. Keep fearing the Lord, keep trusting in him, keep seeking how to make your faith stronger, and that is how you won't lose your joy. Smile on purpose, live with a graceful and content heart despite your circumstances.
Yep, and be thankful. And you have someone to be thankful to. We're not just throwing a thanks into the air hoping it sticks somewhere.
Yeah.
We have someone who created all of this and gave it to us, so we can be thankful straight to him.
Yes. All right, share our show, subscribe, tell your friends, and we hope you will choose joy today. Bye.
Bye.